Tough loss for the Cubs in Boston, but how about that comeback to even make it a close game? Jordan Wicks to the IL, very concerning. We thought that it might happen, and it did. We're going to get into that. Cubs options, also some roster moves, and then a big showdown with the New York Mets and how pitching lines up for that series. All that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up, man. That's just a way of saying, hey, I'm a Cubs fan. I like what you guys are doing. The fact that you're on here every day, just giving us a little Cubs tidbit, something to talk about, a little Cubs baseball. So for you guys, here's that invitation. All right, there he is. A year older since, I guess, we seen him last time. Anthony, I'm Mick. Pasquale, you know him. At Ant Pasquale 3. I'm at Broadcaster Mick. What's up, dude? How was your birthday weekend?
Birthday weekend was good. Unfortunately, can't say the same about the Cubs series out in Boston. The Red Sox, I should say, walked off the Cubs last night. But you mentioned it in the open. Mike Tauchman hit a 3-run homer to make things close, tied it up at 4 in the 8th. But then the 9th inning was not too kind to the Cubbies. And Mark Leiter Jr. gave up his first run of the year, and the Red Sox walk it off on a bloop single into shallow left field. Dansby tried to make a super athletic catch, and I think he knew that as soon as he caught it, he had to turn and fire home because Duran was on third, and he's got wheels. And Dansby, I think, just dropped it, trying to do too much. I was wondering on that play where Happ was. It seemed like he definitely should have gotten to that ball, but it's a loss either way in the books, and the Cubs keep the road trip going with a series loss to start.
Yeah, it was a tough loss, man. I mean, they're all tough losses, but they got hammered 17-0, position players pitching. Those games happen. But I'm going to tell you there's some positives to that game on Sunday night. First off, the guys came fighting back. I mean, they came from behind to tie the game. The Tauchman home run, you mentioned it. The fact that this team's not out of it, you're missing a lot of your best players and another one. And you lost another guy. And but they never gave up. They came roaring back, and Leiter Jr. is going to give up runs. Everybody's going to give up runs.
Right.
Sucks that it kind of happened at Fenway, but just got to get back on track again. You're not going to win. It's hard to win on the road. So you just try to win the games that you can. Now you got the Mets. We're going to get into that series coming up. But the more concerning thing to me is this right here. Jordan Wicks to the IL, forearm tightness. We talked about that on yesterday's show. And I knew it. You if a guy has forearm tightness, you don't throw him back in. That's not like, hey man, put a little ice on your shoulder. I mean, these are injuries that if you don't take care of them when you have an opportunity, turn into surgeries. He's been brilliant. He's one of the reasons why the Cubs are at the top of the division. He has, since he got to the major leagues, fits the part. This is a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And it's right. It's coming right when you just realize that you have finally a little bit of depth all of a sudden with Ben Brown and Hayden Wesneski out of the bullpen. And all of a sudden you need both guys to become starters just like that. And Justin Steele's still down. But I think the big buzzer is whenever you hear forearm is you get scared about Tommy John. And it's usually the forearm tightness that leads to a forearm strain. And then all of a sudden you're out for a year and a half. But it seems like the Cubs are doing this early to make sure that it doesn't get there. Like, that's what it kind of seems like. He said he felt a little bit of forearm tightness before his last start. And then once he started warming up, he felt good. And then after the start the following day, when you do all the icing and the massaging and the stretching, that's when he realized it was still tight. So I think they tried to see if it was going to dissipate before the start. He would have been scheduled yesterday. But instead they scratched him, and then very quickly that turned into a trip to the IL. So it's worrisome for sure. It's nice to know that you do have a little bit of depth to play with Ben Brown and with Hayden Wesneski, who started last night, was a little bit unlucky in the start, but pitched pretty well as he has all season long when he's been up with the club. But the worrisome thing is that's now 3 starters that have had to face time on the IL. Tyone, obviously Steele still, and now Wicks, and we're not even through April yet.
One of the issues that baseball's having right now is that teams are really pushing pitchers to give max effort on throws.
Every
You
pitch,
know,
yeah.
whether it's throwing as hard as you can on a fastball or spinning a baseball as hard as you could possibly spin it, and it's causing injuries. That's not the Cubs. That's all around the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Justin Verlander talking about it, for Greg Maddux talking about it. It's just the way that it goes. I mean, you're going to get injured if you have to use max velocity and max effort to do anything that you're going to do, right? So Wicks, I'm not saying Wicks is one of those guys, but I am saying that it's going to hurt the Cubs not having him. You need Justin Steele to get back as soon as possible. Look for him to be at a minor league stadium near you sometime soon, rehabbing. And I'm guessing 2 or 3 of those and then get back to the major leagues. You're hoping that Tyone's there. All that depth that the Cubs had as far as starting pitching is concerned is being tested right now. The young guys that didn't make the team out of spring training, now they're getting an opportunity to pitch, and how that's going to turn out, it's going to determine how this team does at the beginning of the season. But it's all hands on deck. I mean, that's the way that this thing works. I was surprised by this one. I just didn't expect this. And I feel like of all the injuries, this is the one that really concerns me the most, because I just had him penciled in as, hey, every 5 days you're going to have Jordan Wicks. He's never dealt with injuries before. He's been so healthy.
Right.
And now you don't have him. So you're right. So now you still have Steele out. And then, obviously Wicks, you just got Tyone back, and you're hoping that the Cubs rotation is going to be solid. And then on top of that, a couple of other pitching moves that I wanted to get into with you. But before the game, they said, okay, Luke Little's going down to Iowa. The big left-hander, Daniel Palencia, is coming back up, right? And then Richard Lovelady, who all of us were like, okay, who's this guy? It was like an Oakland A or something, but Lovelady, right? Dick Lovelady. Okay, let's bring him up.
Yeah, they need a lefty badly, and I think that's kind of why he was the next guy up. I think the Cubs still have a lot of faith in Luke Little eventually, but it just hasn't worked out so far this season. He's already had to use 2 options. He gets a little bit erratic, walks some guys, and then all of a sudden he's in trouble. But Lovelady, he's been a Royal, he's been an A, hasn't been great, but he's been serviceable as a big leaguer. That's why the Cubs got him. They thought they can do a little bit of work with him in the pitch lab, and Palencia was a guy who just went down to the minor leagues for probably about a week, 2 weeks to figure some things out, and he came back up, and yesterday it seemed like he did figure those things out. He looked great. Lovelady had a quiet inning as well, so hopefully those guys can continue to contribute to a bullpen that's thinner than it was a week ago, because Ben Brown and Hayden Wesneski are no longer your long relievers. They're now some of your 5 starters. So you need the bullpen to really step up, especially because you've got 16 games in 16 days. I think now it's probably 12 games left in the 12 days. But the fact of the matter is, all that depth that you were counting on and your long relievers, your Wesneskis, your Browns, your Smiley's on the IL, Brown and Wesneski are in the rotation. So you need a lot of people to fill a lot of bullpen innings. So hopefully Palencia and Lovelady are up to the challenge.
And you're going to need the starters to go longer too,
which is tough because you're just bringing him back from the bullpen. Like, it's hard to get 5 or 6 out of Wesneski because he pitched 3 days ago.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how Craig Counsell keeps this team
it's
from
the Craig
falling
Counsell
into
show now.
Right, a long losing streak, because this is the situation where you end up losing a lot of games in a row, and you just got to kind of keep things about the 500 mark until you start getting healthy, which could definitely happen. But what are you going to do, man? You mentioned it, Wesneski now in the starting rotation. Leiter gave up a run. You got to move forward and start to think about the next series, and that includes today's game against the Mets in New York.
Yeah, the Mets have been a team that for the last year and a half have kind of underachieved, but they seem to be finding their groove a little bit. We know they have a lot of talent. I know Pete Alonso crushes the Cubs whenever they play. He always crushes us. So obviously keep an eye on him. He's a guy you're
Polar
gonna,
bear.
yeah, he's a guy you're gonna want to try to get out for sure. But the pitching matchups actually look pretty favorable for the Cubs during this series. And I'm hoping, like you said, Justin Steele gets back soon. I actually was listening to his podcast. Did you see he started a podcast? So him and this guy from Barstool, Marty Mush, started a podcast, and Steele said the most important thing about the hamstring is that he was able to throw the whole time, so he's still stretched out, which
Right.
is good news. So hopefully he doesn't need too much time rehabbing. But this series lines up pretty good for the Cubs pitching staff. You got Tyone tonight. He's been money in his first 2 starts. Hopefully he can keep that going against the former Yankee. Pretty sure these guys were teammates in New York.
Yeah, they were.
So okay, so 2 guys that know each other pretty well, facing off on different teams now. Severino, really good stuff. Had some struggles in years past, but he's have off to a pretty good start so far in 2024. And then the rest of the series, I kind of like the Cubs matchups too. You've got Assad, who you and I both love. He goes in game 2.
Yeah, Sean Manaea, guy who's been a no-hitter pitcher in the past. It was an old
Mhm.
Oakland A. He's a guy that's got good stuff. Shota has been the best pitcher in baseball. I really believe that. I think that look, we got a long way to go, but Shota Imanaga could not have been any better in any of his starts. He's been so good. And then you finish up the series with Ben Brown, who's now in the rotation. Like, there's no question. Like, it's we got to have you now. Go out there and get it done.
Yeah, and he's still somewhat in an audition. Like right now, his starting rotation spot is safe, but when Steele comes back, and then eventually once Wicks comes back, there's going to be a conversation that needs to be had. And I think
Right.
if he keeps pitching, obviously you take away the rough start on Saturday against Boston, but the other starts have looked really clean. And if he keeps pitching that way, he's going to be a hard guy to send down or send back into the bullpen. So hopefully he forces Greg Counsell into some tough decisions.
Well, and the other part of this too is that, like you say, like, hey, what's going to happen? But the way that things are going, you're lucky to have enough guys healthy to have a rotation.
I know, it's insane. The Cubs have been hammered with injuries early, which to the people that think glass half full like me, if you wanna get hit at any point of the season with injuries, it's now, and hopefully by August and September, you're fully strength and healthy, and, you can make a real run, but the fact that they're still, 17 and 11 now, you can't be upset about that.
No, no. Look, it just play 500 until you get some of your guys back,
Right. Tread some
because this
water.
is such a depleted roster. And this Wicks injury to me is the one that really starts to make me feel like, hey, we're in a little bit of trouble right now. I didn't feel like that with Tyone, who got basically didn't get out of spring training. Justin Steele, hey, you're gonna, that's gonna happen. You're gonna lose a guy. But then all of a sudden, it's like you turn around and then you take him out, and you already lost Merriweather and Smiley. You're starting to stack up a bunch of guys who can help this team win. And you got to go to New York and you got to play a Mets team that can be tough. This isn't going to be a pushover. So we'll see what happens. But if you can, I hate to look ahead in a series, but look, if you can split this series, I think it would be really big for this team.
Yeah, and even winning the series, I think, would propel this team in quite a big direction. I think it's tough. There's probably some guys in the lineup that have been struggling that you would like to give a day off and maybe get a breather, but they're so depleted on the bench too that, like, with no Suzuki and no Bellinger, you can't really afford to give Morel a day off because he's struggling. Because who are you going to put? Like, you're going to have Madrigal and Wisdom in the lineup together. Like, you don't want stuff like that. Or Bush is another guy. Mervis can't really figure things out yet. I will say the one shining star of that series with Boston, Pete Crow, looks like he's ready to hit.
Hollywood, baby.
He looks
Hollywood.
like he's ready to hit at the big league level, and
Yeah.
his at bats just look so much better. And I think after he hit that homer on Thursday, his confidence is just where it needs to be now. And I don't think it was before. And I'm just got my fingers crossed for that first bomb to come from Mervis so he shakes things off too.
Yeah, look, there was a lot of naysayers with Hollywood Pete, and I don't know how many times on here I told you guys he was going to hit. It's so good to see him kind of do the things that he's capable of doing. At
For
least
sure.
contributing. And I love the fact that Craig Counsell's like, hey, you know what? Just do something. Just go out there and play good defense. We don't need a whole lot out of you. He's starting to swing the bat, and he's only going to help this team get better and better. So, yeah, and we got to get Mervis going. Mervis has to have that moment too, and it's going to take some struggles, but we've seen it with Bush. We've seen it with Hollywood Pete. We'll
Yep.
see it with Mervis. Get these young guys going because they can be contributors to success, and the Cubs definitely need them. All right, Anthony, you and I, let's get back together again tomorrow. If something happens on the roster, we'll try to pop on there and tell you about it. And then tomorrow night, the Cubs and the Mets, we'll be covering that as well. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe. Thumbs up means you love Cubs content. And we'll look, hit the bell so you know if something's going on.
Exactly.
Covered there as well. Go Cubs.